5, 6, 7, 8.
Hi EXers, welcome to the EX Podcast, episode number 64. This is your host, Stéphane Vincent. I'm here today with you because we need to shake things up in the world of HR, talent acquisition, and company culture in order to create positive employee experiences in our organizations. Your workplace doesn't have to be a dreadful place where employees feel disengaged. This podcast brings a different lens to the HR, employee engagement, and company culture conversation. We approach these topics from a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Our guests, all thought leaders and disruptors in the EX space in their own way, come to this show to share best practices on the key elements that foster employee engagement and strengthen company culture, and also to spark the conversation on how to create these positive employee experiences. Not every company can do what Airbnb or Google do around their employee experience, and this is what this show is all about. Sharing stories of companies of all sizes, not only to show that EX doesn't require a large budget or large team, but also that there isn't one recipe. Each company can find its own way through the EX journey. Today's guest is Rebekah Bastian, Vice President of Community and Culture at Zillow Group, based in Seattle. Today with Rebekah, we talk about what she learned when she was on product side that helps her in her current role, what her team does to support the company's mission, which lessons Zillow learns along the way by scaling up the company and the culture, how the company brings its well-identified core values to life day after day, how Zillow is different when it comes to bridging the gender gap, and how Zillow makes its employer brand stand out in a very competitive talent market. This episode is brought to you by Spring International. Spring is a women-owned boutique firm that focuses on performance-based employee engagement and people analytics. From onboarding to exits, Spring uses proven techniques to help companies improve the employee experience and calculate the ROI of HR programs and initiatives. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Rebekah. And because it takes a good amount of time to produce this podcast, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or YouTube, as it would help promote the content. If you want me to speak at your next events, get some advice on your EX initiatives, or send me feedback and suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummits.com or on Twitter at EX_summits. All right, let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the EX Podcast. Very excited for today's guest, Rebekah Bastian. Rebekah is calling from Seattle, and she is the Vice President of Community and Culture at Zillow Group. Rebekah, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you were one of the early employees at Zillow, and you've held several positions on the product side before moving to the culture side. What did you learn on the product side that is helping you right now in your current role?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. I would say that the biggest set of skills that I've been honing throughout my career and continue to use are really focused on creative problem solving and really just getting things done. So that's something that even before I went into product management, I was learning through degrees in mechanical engineering, which is also a different space than I ended up in, but brought with me through product management. And then it's something that I'm still using now, is being able to identify what problems need to be solved, come up with an array of creative solutions to address them, mix in a little bit of practicality in terms of what solutions are going to work. And then the execution piece of just really being able to bring people together, move things forward, and get stuff done. And that's something that has been relevant throughout my career, and that, I feel like I continue to get better at. Specifically in terms of product management, there's also a lot of kind of methodologies there that I've been able to bring over to the community and culture side. So kind of coming up with a good backlog of ideas of what we should be working on, and then prioritizing those ideas based on business needs. And where we are and where we're trying to go, and making sure that the work we're doing is getting us there. So that's something that we do a lot when we're developing new products, but it's just as pertinent when we're coming up with programs and ideas around the culture of our company, or how we're, creating space for all of our employees to really be thriving here. Same kind of approach. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Continue.
Oh, I was just going to say one other area that's been really relevant that I've learned in terms of people management, and that I feel like I've brought over into this new area, is how to be a good manager, especially to people who don't necessarily have my same background or my same skill set. So on the product side, I found myself many times in my career managing, software developers, for example, or other people with backgrounds that were much more deep and extensive than my own. I don't write code myself, but I would manage software developers and be able to, I think, effectively provide them the support they needed and the growth opportunities they needed through kind of a combination of asking the right questions, helping find the resources they needed when I wasn't that resource, and learning from them as much as supporting them. And that's something that moving into this new space, especially around equity and belonging in some of these areas that are true passions of mine, but I still have plenty to learn in, and as many of us do, I found that being able to been really great for me as well.
All right. So for those who might not be familiar with Zillow, even though I think that our audience knows pretty well what it is, but can you go through a quick history of what Zillow does and where it is currently?
Absolutely. So Zillow is the largest real estate marketplace in the country. And we started off being a database of all homes. So we were really focused on data transparency and turning on the lights around the data that surrounds homes. And so we first launched with the Zestimate, which is our valuation of what we believe homes to be worth. And we had Zestimates for most of the homes in the country. And then we started building marketplaces on top of that. So connecting the professional side and the consumer side of the different marketplaces that are formed around real estate. So for example, connecting home buyers and sellers with real estate agents, connecting renters with landlords and property managers, connecting people who are looking to get a mortgage with lenders. And so we really kind of powered it with both data information, but then those connections as well.
How many employees does Zillow have currently?
We have about 3,800 now.
Okay. Now, so you are now the VP of Community and Culture, as I said in the introduction. So can you tell us a bit more about what are your responsibilities in that role?
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, so this is a pretty new team that we formed about a year ago here at Zillow Group, and it focuses on three main areas. One of them is what we call equity and belonging. It's kind of the extension of what was referred to as diversity and inclusion. And that's really focused on creating a culture where everyone can really be bringing their best self to work and having a voice at the table. So we want to hire a really amazing, diverse set of employees, but then we also want to create the space where they can influence the business decisions and the products and the work that we're doing, and really have a seat at the table there. So it's creating that environment where people feel that sense of community and feel like they can really grow and thrive in their careers here. The second area that my team is focused on is around cultural engagement. So that's thinking about how our employees are engaging with each other through things like shared interests and events, and also how they're engaging with our communities, so through volunteering and other community partnerships. And then the third area is kind of a more unique area in this space, but really powerful. It's social impact products. And so with that, we're saying, well, if we're going to be getting our employees engaged, then one of the most unique ways we can be doing that is to have them use the skills that they have to build on top of the products and the platforms that they've built. And we want them to do that in order to solve social issues, especially around housing, since we're focused on housing here at Zillow Group.
How many people do you have on your team?
There's 8 of us right now,
Okay.
and growing. Yeah.
And what are their backgrounds?
We have a pretty wide array of backgrounds on my team. So we have people that have expertise in equity and belonging, and in that part of the work. I have a product manager who actually came from our Zillow product teams as well, who has really deep experience in building products at Zillow Group. And then we have kind of a few of the more program manager types that are really about that kind of problem solving and getting things done that I had mentioned. And one of my managers has a background in content. So, one piece that we think is really important in doing this work is being able to share stories around it, both the stories of our employees and their experiences, and also stories about the different cultures and backgrounds that the people who work here bring with them, and also just sharing, really being transparent about the work that we're doing, because really in this space, we're all on a journey. And so the more we can share what that journey looks like, the more we can hopefully bring more people along and inspire more people.
So let's talk a bit about Zillow's progression and maturity, I would say as well. So what lessons did Zillow learn along the way by scaling up the company and the culture from a handful of employees where you started to more than about 3,300 employees that you have today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fortunately, we have always been a company that's really, inherently valued equity and belonging as a component of our culture. And we've really always had a strong focus on culture from the beginning. The kind of startup-y culture of taking big swings and being okay with failing sometimes and trying new things, but also the culture of just really collaborating and respecting each other. And we've always focused on hiring people that work well with other people and not just having the intelligence in the background, but the interpersonal skills. So that's always been there. At the same time, when we founded the company, we were trying to build it as fast as we could. And so while that's always been important to us, we're finally now being able to, in the past few years, be a little bit more disciplined to our approach, focusing on equity and belonging and culture in a way that's going to scale as we keep getting larger.
So Zillow has deeply anchored core values in its day-to-day operations. Can you tell us what these core values are and how you bring them to life?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The core values, I think, are a really fantastic way of having a common language around what's important to us. And all of our employees know what the core values are and talk about them and, give each other compliments based on execution of the core values. And we even have it be part of our internal review process because it's so important that everyone's carrying that out. So the core values that we have are, the first one is own it, or I guess they don't go in a particular order, but we have own it. And that's really about taking responsibility for your work, not assuming that somebody else is going to do it, and really feeling like you have ownership over both what you're working on, but the success of the business as a whole. The next one is turn on the lights. And that one's all about transparency. And I think that we live that out both internally because we have a very transparent culture where we really want everybody who's working here to understand what we're working towards and why and how we're going to get there. But also our whole product has been built on this notion of transparency and really turning on the lights for consumers about the real estate space, which really before Zillow came along was pretty opaque. People didn't have access to very much data or information about what was happening in the real estate transactions that were such a huge part of their lives. And so turning on the lights externally has been a really important goal for us as well. The next core value is, we call it Zillow Group is a team sport. And so that one's all about collaboration and valuing that you're not just doing a great job in a silo, but in order for us to get the best results, it's really collaborating with each other, having really strong positive relationships with each other in order to do our best work together. The next one we call Move Fast, Think Big. And that one's really about taking big swings. So we want to keep challenging ourselves to operate kind of the way we did as a startup, which is we have to keep innovating. We have to keep challenging our own ideas and challenging what we've built, and acting with kind of a sense of urgency because you can't just rest on your laurels. We have to keep growing and innovating as fast as we ever have. The next one is act with integrity, and that's just kind of core to who we are, right? We want to do the right thing. We want to do the right thing with each other in our interactions within the workplace, but we also want to do the right thing for all of the people that our business touches, the consumers and the professionals that use our products, everything down to the vendors that we work with, the communities that we build offices in, everyone. It's so important that if we're acting with integrity and then also really believing that in each other, so assuming best intentions about each other, then, generally the best decisions will get made that way. And then the last one, and it's a little bit cheeky, but we say winning is fun. And that's, not being necessarily competitive against each other, but let's celebrate our wins, right? Because we're gonna work hard, we're gonna do awesome work, and we're going to have some successes. And let's take a minute and celebrate those because that's a really fun part of the journey as well. So those are the core values, and again, we kind of live by them, and it gives us that kind of common context to evaluate what's important and to help us in our decision making.
Can you share with us some examples of initiatives or programs that you run in the three main areas that your team focuses on: equity and belonging, social impact products, and cultural engagement?
Yes, absolutely. So in equity and belonging, one of the big programs that we've been working on so far has been our affinity networks. So we have 8 affinity networks, and those are spaces where we try to create community for employees from groups that are more underrepresented within our company. And so those have elected leadership that helps define a charter for the network. And the charters are usually focused on helping to support and grow that network. And there's some community involvement. There's a lot of thinking through kind of cross-network interactions because we're recognizing the intersectionality of who we all are, that most people don't identify as just, one specific community, but many. And so really thinking about how those all play together. So that's one of the big areas within equity and belonging. The other program that we're really excited about that's really just getting off the ground now is called Equity and Belonging Ambassadors. And what that is giving every single person in the company the opportunity to be an ambassador and get the kind of the learning and the support and the resources that they need to go apply an equity lens to their area of the business. So the goal here is that we have enough people who are really caring about and learning about how to create an equitable workplace where everyone belongs. And every conference room here that has a discussion happening in it about anything business related has at least someone there to raise their hand and kind of apply that lens to the conversation. So we're really excited about that. In terms of the cultural engagement, that is really tied in closely with equity and belonging because we do have members of all of our affinity networks that are helping us to define what's important in our culture and how we want to be engaging with each other. So there we have, different clubs that might be shared interests. So, the runners club or the bike to work club or the people that love wine club, things like that. We also throw some really pretty amazing parties. We partner with our events team and our facilities team, and we do some really fun parties and different cultural events. Like we did a lot for Pride this year with parties and parades. We have just a lot of different kinds of events in the company that bring people together. And so that's the engagement piece. And then we also do a lot with, we partner with our government relations team that has our program called the Home Project, where we are supporting different community organizations that have a focus on housing stability. And so we find volunteer opportunities there and try to get our employees involved in volunteering in our communities as well. We also have community conversations that kind of crosses between equity and belonging and cultural engagement too, where we bring in some really amazing speakers to talk with our employees about different topics. And so we've had some pretty incredible ones recently, like Van Jones just came in recently and spoke. And that's a great way to really help our employees understand even more about the both local and national communities and the topics that are impacting them the most. And then in terms of our social impact products, we have a product that we've been working on for a while now. I actually spearheaded it a little bit more in a grassroots style a few years ago, but we're still innovating on that. That's called Community Pillar. And that's really focused on how we can be connecting the renters who are experiencing barriers. So there's a lot of people who have the means to pay for rent, but have different barriers such as spotty credit score or employment history or housing history, and it's hard for them to get into rentals. So trying to connect those people with the landlords and property managers in their communities that want to just raise their hands and help in any way that they can. So making those connections with the hopes of getting more people into stable housing. So that's one idea in that space that we've been exploring. But actually just last week, we did this really cool design sprint with members of our rentals team and my team and government relations and some different designers and researchers. And we spent 3 days in a room together really thinking through what the roadmap can look like for all the different ways that we can be building on top of our products to solve social issues. And the really exciting thing there is that we have a huge roadmap ahead of us that we're excited to tackle. So there's a lot more coming in that space too.
That's quite a pretty cool area, I would say, to focus on as well, and tie that community service, community support, and product development as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I find it super exciting.
Do you have any remote employees?
We have offices in 9 locations, and then we have some remote employees as well.
How do you build that sense of belonging in the organizations across multiple locations?
Yeah, well, I mean, the affinity networks have actually been really great cross-office because it's bringing people from different communities together across the different offices. And so we've actually heard some really good feedback about the connections that people are making in different Zillow offices. And so that means that there's a lot of Slack conversations going on. We use Slack to communicate internally. And so that, but then also when people visit other offices, they already have a community there that they feel like they belong with.
So the tech industry is known for being male-driven, with a few women in executive roles. How is Zillow different when it comes to bridging the gender gap?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had quite a few women in leadership positions here. In fact, our first hire was actually a woman who's still with the company. So I think that, when you look at who's making up an industry, a lot of it comes from leadership and trickles down. So I think having some really amazing women in leadership roles here has been inspiring for many. We do a focus on gender pay equality, and we have a whole audit that showed that on average, and so that's always been important to us. And then, we also have, the Women's Affinity Network and also Women in Tech and Women in Engineering networks. And so there's a really good sense of community here as well. So, I mean, personally, as a woman who's come through my career for the past 13 years here at Zillow Group, I've had a fantastic experience.
Earlier in the conversation, we talked about, your experience on the product side and now working on the culture side. And, I see a lot of similarities between product development and culture or employee experience development, where it's all about, coming with new ideas, testing those ideas, getting feedback, making some changes or iterations along the way, instead of trying to come up with a very finished and polished product. Is it the way you operate as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a long game, right? So I think it's important both in product and in culture to have a vision of where you're wanting to go long term, but then also kind of figure out what the milestones are that are going to get you there, and prioritizing them, and of course revisiting plans along the way as you learn more. So I mean, that's why we have a whole department here focused on community and culture now that will continue to grow, and why we have roadmaps that span years ahead of us, is because it's not a program. It's not a thing to get done. It's an ongoing, it's ongoing work. Yep.
So Zillow is based in Seattle, as I mentioned, home of Amazon, Microsoft, and even Starbucks that is now developing its digital experience. So obviously the competition for talent is pretty harsh in Seattle. How does Zillow make its employer brand stand out in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not just Seattle. Even we have 9 offices, and many of them are in pretty competitive places for recruiting. I think our culture is a big piece of what stands out for people. We believe in our people being our greatest assets. And so we do a lot of work to kind of create this great employee experience so that we can both attract and retain those people that we want to have here. And so there's, a lot of the cultural stuff, a lot of what my team works on and other teams. We have, great perks and benefits that are certainly competitive in cities where it's tough to hire great talent. And we have a really good work-life balance, which is also important and can be differentiated from, some of the companies that are around here as well. I mean, personally, I think that's almost table stakes. Like, you have to have great benefits and great perks. You have to have a great culture where people really feel valued. And then, the thing that's kind of above and beyond that, and especially we're seeing with more of the younger generation these days, is you have to be working on something meaningful. You have to be doing work that's going to inspire you and that's going to make you excited to come to work every day. And I think that's something that's even, that has to be part of the DNA of the company, because you can't fake that one. And so I think we're really lucky in that we're working in a space that is, impacts people's lives in such a core way, and we're doing such consumer-focused work in that space. And I think, arguably making a lot of lives better because of it. And so, we can do all the things that we have to do to, be kind of a sexy workplace. But at the end of the day, it's working on those, amazing products and amazing businesses that's really attracting people too.
So you talked briefly about the employee journey. Can you share with us some cool stuff or unusual stuff that you guys do across the entire employee journey, maybe from the candidate's side to the interview process, maybe onboarding process, and so forth?
Yeah, so looking at what we do that's unique in terms of the recruiting process that we have?
Yes.
So there's kind of a lot of best practices that we've been kind of learning about and focusing on. So in terms of, starting with kind of how we word our job descriptions in order to really attract an amazing group of people from more diverse backgrounds, is we try to think about what are really the core requirements for a job, and then not necessarily list out all the things that aren't truly core requirements. Because what we found is, there's a great study that I think a lot of people cite about women feeling like they need to be 100% qualified to apply for a role, and I think it's 60% for men, and that applies for other underrepresented groups too. So we really want to not scare people off who aren't going to apply if they're not meeting a few of the requirements. So that's the first step. Then we look at how we're reaching people. So just where we're sourcing from, what events we're showing up to, what partnerships with different organizations we're forming, and really trying to kind of broaden who we're reaching just through that sourcing. Then when we're looking at interviews, we want to have diverse interview loops here for 2 reasons. One, because that's a better candidate experience to see a wider range of who our employees are that are interviewing them, but it also gives better in that candidate. And really the whole interviewing experience and then onboarding experience is super personalized. So people want to talk to humans and not robots, right? So we take that into consideration, and we really try to make sure that we understand what the person is looking for that we're interviewing, and then trying to provide that experience and that information to them so that they can make the best decision about us as well. And then when we bring people in, we've definitely come a long way with our onboarding. So we set them up with what we call a Z-Pal, which is someone that's not on their team, but is kind of a new friend that can show them the ropes about the company. We have really extensive onboarding in terms of just how to navigate, Zillow Group and how to get things done here. And then the teams all provide really strong mentorship as well as people are coming in. So we've definitely heard great things about kind of where we're going with that onboarding and training experience as employees come in. And we set their computers up for them. When I first started here in the beginning, we'd get a box with a computer in it. Mm-hmm. So we've come a ways from that.
So Zillow being I think we can qualify it as a software company, right, and a digital experience company. Technology has a huge place in the way you conduct your business. How much of technology and maybe automation or machine learning, artificial intelligence, the company is using right now around company culture and employee experience?
Well, we have a what we call a people analytics team that is a hugely valuable resource to me in my new role, and that's a team that's looking at all the data about our employees. So that's everything from kind of the different demographics and backgrounds of our employees, looking at the data from our employee surveys that we send out about what the employee experience is, how people feel a sense of belonging, how engaged they are with their work, really analyzing that in different ways. And then also looking at, things like they're the ones that kind of conduct a lot of our pay equity and looking through retention and growth in careers and all of that. So I think that we have always from the beginning been a really data-driven company. And so it's really awesome that we can be using those skills to also make sure that we're looking at the right data to keep our employees really happy and successful here.
So we talked about equity and belonging. So how do you put together a strategic plan in terms of attracting talents or even developing talents within the organization to meet some equity and belonging goals? How does it work exactly?
Sorry, there's a little glitch there and you cut out for a second. Do you mind repeating that question?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes. How do you put together a strategic plan when it comes to equity and belongings? How do you identify which type of backgrounds or profiles you need to hire, or the profiles or the individuals that you need to promote or to develop within the organization? How do you come up with specific numbers or specific priorities?
Yeah, I think numbers can get us a long ways there in terms of, understanding the makeup of our employees and the experience that our employees are having. So I think that's a great starting point and a great thing to measure along the way. There's also there's really no replacement for just human connections in this space either. Mm-hmm. So since I started this role and still now, I'm constantly meeting with people just to really hear about what their experiences are, what their goals are, what the obstacles they're facing are, and that really informs a lot of what our roadmap ends up being, because it's such a human space. So, data can help keep us on track, but we really need to be connected to the people that we're trying to serve in this space in order to do our best work. And then, there's definitely, it's kind of taking the quantitative data, taking the qualitative data, but then also having some big ideas. I think it's necessary. There are some best practices, and we can certainly learn from that. But I think there's still a lot of really big ideas that we have yet to uncover that's really going to take us to the next level. And so, I think that's what I certainly spend a lot of time doing is brainstorming and coming up with big ideas, and we'll keep trying them. I know my team and even, people throughout the company, ideas are coming from all over the place right now because it's an area that so many people are so passionate about. which is awesome. So really kind of cataloging those ideas and using metrics to help inform what directions we take, but thinking outside the box at the same time.
What does your office space look like? And is it the same across all the locations, or is it different from one location to another?
It's very modern. It's very comfortable, and we have kind of a standardized style that we do see in all of our locations, but each one has a little bit of its own unique flair as well. Like in our Seattle office, we have an amazing view of the Puget Sound, so that's lovely to see every day.
Yeah, you can have that.
Some kind of, yeah. And then we have open workspaces, so it really is conducive to collaborating with you around and talk with your teammate about an idea you're having. But then we have a lot of kind of private spaces as well for just getting work done.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the conversation now. So, but before we conclude, let me ask you some fun questions and rapid questions. If you were to invite a historical figure or someone famous to dinner, who would you pick and why?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and admit for the first time on air here that I have just developed my first ever celebrity crush in Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam.
Oh,
We're just here playing something called the Home Shows in Seattle. I've never had a celebrity crush before, but something about him being like kind of a sexy rock god, but also he just created this whole campaign, or his team did, around trying to solve homelessness in Seattle. So they just raised $12 million as part of these home shows, and they brought the whole community together. So businesses, large and small, nonprofits, just private donors and private citizens, they brought everyone together with this goal of trying to solve homelessness in Seattle. And it was an amazing initiative, and the show was incredible, and he's pretty rad. So I'm going to invite him over for dinner. I think my husband would approve too. He always liked him as well.
Okay, good. Are you a coffee aficionado?
Am I what?
A coffee aficionado?
Oh yes. Yes, I am.
What type of coffee do you like?
Like what brand or?
What brand or what type of coffee?
Okay. Well, I usually go to Cafe Ladra, which is across the street from the office here. I have usually at least 3 coffees with strangers a week just to kind of get to know new people. So that's my go-to spot for meeting them. And I drink an Americano with a little bit of soy milk in it.
Okay. What was your dream job growing up as a kid?
There's been a few different ones, but I would say the idea that has stuck in my head for the longest, and I would say is still my dream job, is being an inventor, which, on a good day, I feel like I am living the dream because I'm inventing new things all the time. But that's always been kind of the driving force behind what I do.
Okay, if you were to pick one inventor, who would you pick then? Someone that fascinates you, someone that you would love to meet even if he's deceased.
Gosh, that's a great question that I don't have an answer to, which is probably because I didn't do very well in history class, so I haven't cataloged all the inventors. But I wouldn't mind hanging out with Steve Jobs, who's come up with a few cool inventions.
Just a few. Yeah. What excites you the most when you go to work?
Just big ideas. They happen a lot. The more people I talk to and the more things I explore, the more ideas pop into my head. And I just totally get off on ideas. I mean, ask anyone around me. I'm always like, I have an idea. And then when the ideas start to form together into a bigger idea, that's pretty awesome.
And what could we spot you doing outside of work that would flabbergast your coworkers?
I do aerial acrobatics.
Oh.
So so it can be flabbergasting at times. It's a lot of fun. It's my big hobby outside of work.
That's quite unusual, I would say.
It's fun.
What is the way for our listeners to follow you and Zillow on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter as Rebekah_Bastian, REBEKAH_BASTIAN. We just launched a new Instagram channel called Zillow Group Life, and my team's actually contributing a lot to that because it's a big focus on our culture. So that's a great one to follow. And then Zillow Group's on Twitter as well, just at Zillow Group.
Great, and we'll share those on the podcast notes as well. Any last word of advice or wisdom?
The motto I really always liked, I think it comes from the Girl Scouts, is leave it better than you found it. So I would just throw out that one as kind of just a really broad goal for everyone to keep in mind no matter what you're doing.
It's a nice way to conclude this conversation. It's been a pleasure, Rebekah, to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been really fun talking to you.
Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.